this is something that can be a continuous thing, and I've said that to anybody that wants to come explore this again. So let's start off, and if you want, we are recording, by the way.
I figured.
And if you want to just start by like introducing yourself and kind of like what you do and some of your goals and stuff like that.
Yeah. So my name is Chrissy, and I'll just start with like a little bit of my background. I'm originally from the Bay Area, so I grew up in the East Bay, and then how I ended up in San Diego is I went to San Diego State for undergrad and just really liked being in San Diego. I went to grad school back in the Bay Area to chiropractic school, which is in Hayward, and also East Bay, and a very industrial area
I've been around
of the Bay. It's like not super pretty, but that's where the school was. So went to chiropractic school there, had some time after school in the Bay, trying to just like figure out where I wanted to be and what I'm wanting to do, and just like really tuning in. I took that time to really tune into like what's my path and like really intuitively following that, which led me back to San Diego. So I'm back in San Diego. I have my practice. It's called Just Be Chiropractic, and that is really intentional with that name as well, because it's all about being present and like being in the moment. And the more we can be like ourselves in our body in the present moment, just like really tuned in to our connection to source energy as well, we can, create more alignment in our life and more healing and more vitality just by being present and showing up as we are. And that includes not so great emotions or things or feelings, and that includes like the joy and abundance and amazingness that life has to offer, if that makes sense.
Of course.
Being present with both. So that's kind of the purpose and intention behind the name of my practice. And what else? I love nature. I just like a little more about me. I love nature. I love being by the beach. I'm so grateful to be by the beach, by the water. I love being by water and land. I love rivers as well, and lakes are nice too. But I've been to the Yuba River. It's like one of my faves.
Where's
Have
that?
you been there? It's up in Northern California by Grass Valley in Nevada City. Or like that's the area I was at.
Yeah, I haven't explored that one yet.
Okay.
And what's so special about that one?
It's like between Tahoe and Sac. It's like kind of...
Been to Tahoe.
Yeah.
So I know that area.
So like North Tahoe and Sac. Yeah. What's so special about it? It was just magical. So I went there with a friend of mine. She hosts women's retreats or like women's gatherings. And so we went or another friend of mine went, and we went to our friend's house and for a weekend retreat and went to the Yuba River. And that was my first time being like naked in nature and like with women. And it was like so amazing because I don't know, there's something so freeing about gathering as women and just like fully embodying who we are and connecting to the earth and the water. And it was so special and so magical.
Yeah.
And it was cool too because it was a pretty hot day. Sun was out. We had the cool river water flowing, and it was amazing. And then these huge rock structures, they're like big granite rocks, and they were so hot and warm. So it was nice to have the contrast of like getting warm and hot on the rocks and then jumping into the cool. And so just having so many different elements. And like there's trees all around, gorgeous. It's a more foresty environment. So I love the Yuba. It was really
cool. That is
really special place.
Yeah, sounds like a really special moment.
Yeah.
To like explore those things, especially if you've never done it before
Yeah,
either.
totally.
Too. So it's grounding to like have those moments to be like free, and then be around people that are like it's a normal thing too.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
I remember like the first time I ever like got naked was in like Biarritz, France.
Okay.
And I was like fairly young when I did it, but it was so funny because like I was like, oh, like I don't know, like kind of thing. And then I did it, and then I realized like nobody cared.
It's like, yeah.
And they're like, wait, you're like you should be looking at me, and they're like no, like nobody cares. Like practically everybody's naked, and you're like, oh wait, this is how like we kind of are already, but we have stuff on top of us. So yeah, it's a good feeling to explore those things, and I recommend it to anybody that wants to rewire those parts of yourselves to realize that we're already naked in a way, that we're just wearing stuff on top of our skin, you know, and it's a freeing thing, you know. But
yeah, and a lot can come up. Like, it was interesting too, because that concept of like, we're wearing clothes, but like when I first went in, I was like, I'm not gonna take my underwear off or my bathing suit bottoms off.
Yeah.
I went into that like experience like prepping for that, just because I don't know, I just like come from a little more modesty, and I've never really like been like so exposed to other people unless it's a romantic way, right? And so I went in thinking that, and then everyone else was like taking everything off, and I was like, you know what? It's okay, Chrissy. Like, you can be free and allow that. And it's just interesting what shows up with, like, you know, are we self-conscious? What are we self-conscious around our body? Like, what is our relationship to our body? How can we just, like, just be in our body and, like, really accept our body and love our body as much as we can, and do it with our sisters or whoever we're with, right? Like, our friends, family, whoever.
Yeah.
Kids, right?
Yeah, well, we definitely didn't grow up in the 60s, but my mom has lots of stories where she was like parties, people were just like walking around naked. And I was like, oh really? You know, and it was like, but then it was like, you know, she would be like, yeah, there'd be people like just totally free, like not, and people wouldn't look at them like, oh my gosh, this is like a normal thing, and it's like it's so funny because that like wasn't that long ago.
Yeah.
And we still live in those areas like San Diego, because you know my mom comes from La Jolla and started lots of different parties in La Jolla where that stuff happened.
Okay.
You know, and it's so funny, we've come so far from just that many years ago to where we are now. And I think there's definitely more people that explore those things, and it's a lot more freeing these days, but at the same time, like, to all these fluctuations in society, you know, where you do like the roller coaster of like, you know, what society deems as right, wrong, or indifferent is kind of funny to look back on that, you know what I mean? It's like, it wasn't that long ago. No. You know what I mean? No. And there are a lot of people doing that. But there's definitely places I've been, you know, that like Italy and France and some other places. Even when I was younger, going to different places, especially like I have a kind of a funny story. When I was younger, before 20, so like I think I was like 18, I remember going to like Biarritz, France, and seeing people playing volleyball naked was definitely an experience.
Oh, that's different.
So that's a little different. I was like, this is when you might want to have some clothing, but this is definitely a unique experience watching something like that. Yeah. But other than that, I mean, I've definitely been around a lot of naked people. So and even for myself, like it's funny, every time I do it, I always like am tapping into some kind of like exploratory thought feeling thing, because like being self-conscious, you know, like you're always like realize like, oh, like, you know, you're comparing and contrasting and doing all these things, and it's like you dive so far into that, and you're like, oh my gosh, I have so much to work on. you know,
a lot can show up.
You know, a lot. Well, yeah, it's, you put yourself in those types of situations, you realize like, man, there's a lot of things I need to work on. But if you never put yourself in, you know, something like that, it's like, how would you know?
Exactly.
You know?
And I think it's important, not just like in those types of situations, but important to put ourselves in situations that are a little uncomfortable or are going to show us something about ourselves that we may not have seen before. Because what I've learned, like, I've had a really interesting past few years, and I'm really in a time where I'm kind of I'm in that phase where I have to like really put myself in new situations, meeting people. I'm trying to grow and expand my practice, and it can be challenging, right? Like, a lot of insecurity can show up and a lot of fear can show up, but the more we do it, the more we put ourselves in new environments and new situations, that it may lead to something, one, beautiful, and two, it leads to us feeling so much more confident in ourselves, because once we get through those like little self-doubts or insecurities and kind of like looking at those, then we can really get more clarity and more connection to ourselves, and that builds the confidence, right?
Yeah.
And really getting even more attuned to like, where are the places that I fit in, and like, where is the alignment of like who I want to be around and spend my time with in these communities, things like that.
Yeah.
So
let me let them out really quick. Sorry.
Okay, no worries.
Be really quick. I don't know what they're barking at right now. What are you guys barking at?
No worries.
Sorry.
No worries.
I don't know what they're barking at. Yeah, for me, I like a little bit of uncomfortability every day.
Yes.
I think it's like my injection of like growth, because I think there's like, it's like, to me, I've kind of learned it's like one and the same.
Yeah.
Like if I'm not feeling uncomfortable every day in like something, then I don't feel like I'm expanding my capacity to deal with things.
Yeah.
Like before you got here, for example.
Okay.
Like my computer wasn't working. I had people calling me from work. Credit card wasn't working. I had people employees calling me to pay for stuff, and my credit card wasn't working.
Oh no.
And then I was trying to get ready for the podcast all at the same time, and I was like, oh man, it just all comes at once sometimes, And I was like, geez, can it just like slow down a little bit? And then my wife got home and she was like asking me questions, and I was just like, universe, just like slow down just a little bit. Like right now, I was like racing to take a shower and all this other stuff, but I stopped for just 1 second and I was like, this is just a simple test, of like my capacity to deal with these things properly, and then to not stress myself out. There's good stress and bad stress. So I was like, this is good stress.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm just like, it's just testing my body and my ability right now to deal with expanding my capacity and understanding more of what I need to do to develop myself with all these different things.
Yeah.
And plus I woke up really early today and boxed, which was good. So I did like an hour of boxing this morning, which also brought my like stress levels down, so that I was able to do that. And then once I started dealing with this stuff, I was like, this isn't so bad. It's as long as I can figure all of this out, to then get to the podcast, to then get to the thing after the podcast, I'll be fine. You know what I mean? So it was funny because I was practically on the phone in the shower, like dealing with stuff all at the same time. And I was like, hey, if you can figure it out and deal with it, then like you're doing great.
Yeah.
It's only like when you start shutting down and you're like not figuring something out, is when you're like not doing what you should be doing, right?
Totally.
You know what I mean? So I'm like, as long as I'm moving forward, I'm taking action, I'm doing what I need to, like I'm doing great. You know what I mean? And I think some people get so down on themselves sometimes. They're like, I'm not doing perfect, or like whatever that may be. But I'm like, as long as you're taking like each step forward to find progress in whatever it is that you're doing amazing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like, to each their own, and don't compare to other people. You have your own ability to deal with things in the way that you're capable of, and as long as you're getting there, and that's it.
Absolutely.
Simple as that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, the action, yeah.
I gotta do that every once in a while.
When everything's like all at once, you're like, okay, like we have to like expand out and look at the big picture and just know like this is like a little moment in like of time in like a big, broader like period of life, and it's all gonna work out.
Yeah.
And I think the action steps are like the key to how we continue to move forward. And bringing us to the present moment, like, okay, what can I do right now to like help find solutions or create solutions or, find my way through this hiccup.
Yeah.
Because it's just a hiccup.
It's just a hiccup.
It's just
There's a lot, or maybe a lot of hiccups at once.
Or that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like those moments where you're like, and you're like, oh, just stop already. And you're like, why can't somebody just scare me right now to like snap me back in?
Yeah.
But for like all the people out there, that want to start their own business and are kind of like scared to jump into those shoes, because obviously it takes a lot, like what would you recommend to people to maybe like as a woman starting their own business and then like losing that idea of like scarcity or unknowing, or can you recommend like maybe a couple things, especially in San Diego, because it's very difficult. It's not the easiest place to start anything, so what would you say to someone that's maybe trying to start something similar or just a business in general?
Yeah, I think something like when I look back on myself starting my practice, I was very like confident, like we're gonna just do this, we're gonna dive in, and I think something that I would have done a little differently is just really engage with connections more. Like, where are the people that I really resonate with, and where do I find them? And I feel more settled into that now. I mean, it's still a process. And that's another thing is like it's always a process.
Yeah,
like even with any business, and this is also like in my world, like we always talk about how business is also a reflection of like who you are and where you're at in life, and like your internal energy as well. And so the more like I feel like I'm taking care of myself and more energized from within is where I start to see more expansion.
That's
right?
Great. Yep.
And so, and then like, but it continues. Like it doesn't end. Just like life continues. Like we're always getting to new stages and new levels within our business. And so I think something I would have done a little differently is really finding more of like that community and like network system before kind of just like jumping into it. And I think that even though I didn't do that, there's nothing wrong with my path. Like at the same time, like I definitely would have done a few things a little differently, and I know that like all of these are the steps to where I'm going and to how I've gotten to where I am. And did that answer your question?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
It's all answering it. I kind of have like a insert to like another question into that too. Like, when did you realize that was right for you and like your path? Did you like the obviously came later? That it obviously came later when you're like I should have done this, but I think this is great. Yeah. Either way, like however like I went about it.
Yeah.
Is that like part of like the mantra of like who you are, or is that more so like something you came to understand, or like explain that a little bit?
Yeah. So I think it's like, it comes back to like who I am and how I operate a little bit, because like within chiropractic, and I'm just going to kind of bring that in too. Within chiropractic, there's so many different styles. Have you been to a chiropractor before?
Yes.
Okay. So there's so many. Have you been to multiple chiropractors?
Yes.
So there's so many different styles, right? There's a lot of different approaches. And one reason why I knew like I wanted to do it, like have my own thing, is because my style is so unique. There's like a small niche within chiropractic that works, has an approach or style called biogeometric integration, and so that's my style.
Cool. So I don't know what that is. Can you explain that a little bit?
Sure. Yeah. So so it's biogeometric integration. So we have geometry, like geometry of the world, right? All around us. And we also have that same geometry that we see in the world around us within our body, right? And it can shift and distort and create tension patterns. So that's where we start to feel it. And so studying biogeometric integration, I've learned how it's kind of like a map, like of the geometry within the body.
Okay.
And I've learned how to find these patterns because everything in the body is connected. Can I bring out a tool that I brought?
Oh, of course, please.
I prepared a little bit.
Stuff.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So everything is connected, right? So we have hard things in our body and we have soft things in our body. So these are like our bones, and this is, connective tissue and muscle.
Yep.
So, and when you look through this, you can see a bunch of geometric shapes, right? So this is like a little fractal of like what we have in our body. So when we start to experience life around us, and we're not integrating it, this is where the integration comes in, we're not able to like integrate different information we're taking in. Some people call it stressors, right? If we have a lot of stress or things that show up, we don't integrate it all the time. Like sometimes we're like, okay, I can't deal with that right now.
Yeah.
I'll have to deal with it later.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Like this morning.
Yeah.
Made those conscious decisions. So
yeah.
I completely understand.
And that's great that we are able to make it consciously, and there's so many people doing that unconsciously as well, right?
Yep.
And when we're doing it consciously, we know like, okay, at some point I need to revisit that and work with that and integrate those patterns. But what happens is we, have too much stress, our capacity or, our gas tank is low in what our capacity is for receiving information or stress. And then our body starts to shift, right? So if we move our bones will shift our fascia. If we move our fascia, it will shift our bones too. Do you see that?
Absolutely.
And so our body basically distorts in an organized way with the geometry. And so when we're working with these patterns, what I'm doing is I'm finding like where these little points of stored potential energy are, and how can we find where that's connected to throughout the body, because it's all connected, right? It's all connected. And so once we find these patterns, then we really are able to integrate them. And how do we do that? We do that through different forces, right? We have more gentle forces. We have more bigger structural forces, which is what most people see in chiropractic.
Yep.
We have breathing as a tool. We can work into the muscular system. And then like part of my work is really interactive. So I'm like really kind of like cueing like breath and movement. Like, okay, can you breathe in right here? Like I could be pointing right here. Sometimes I'm pointing on the surface, but sometimes I'm actually like vectoring is what we call it, a little bit deeper into the system. And so it could be a very light touch and, requesting some breath or movement in a certain way during the adjustment to really integrate these patterns and clear them. And once they're cleared, what we're doing is we're creating more space in the nervous system. We're creating more space in the nervous system and in the body to find more balance and recalibrate and to really be able to take in more information. What's the goal? The goal is to become more adaptable in the moment, right? Like what we were talking about. It's like in the moment, can we become conscious of our patterns of like, oh, I need to deal with this later, or, oh, like this is coming up for me right now, like, and where am I feeling that in my body? Or what's happening with my breath? Am I breathing? Or am I just like shallow breathing? Like, am I just chest breathing? Or am I truly breathing?
Yes. I was doing that yesterday. I was like driving and I was kind of having a little anxiety attack. So, so I was like telling myself, and I did a little bit of like repetition in what I was saying to myself through like self-talk. And I was like, where the breath goes, the body will follow.
Yes.
So I was just like, I need to breathe, and then like when I'm listening to myself breathe and I'm consciously breathing, the body's gonna relax and I'm gonna do what I need to do, because I drove like all day yesterday, and I got to the point because that's part of my job.
Is that?
You know,
Okay.
so I was just like driving and I was like, I'm so done. And then when I was getting in traffic, I was like getting anxiety and I was like, I want to be home. And I was having anxiety, you know, and then I was like, oh, I could feel my body tightening up. So I started to do that. But it's definitely a correlation to everything that you're saying. So
yeah, the breath is such an important tool, which is why I really incorporate it in every single adjustment.
mm-hmm.
Every adjustment, I'm gonna tell you to breathe in so many places, and something so many people say is like, I didn't know I could breathe there. And I'm like, yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, you can breathe to your toes. Like, you can really intentionally focus your breath to your toes. Yeah. And it sounds weird, but...
Oh, no, it's not weird. Not weird for me.
Yeah, okay, great. Once you, like, train that, though, like, yeah, exactly. It's not weird.
I think breath is so amazing. I mean, I've done breath work and understand the value of it and using different parts of your lung capacity that most people never tap into.
Exactly.
Because we're so surface level with, like, how we use our lungs and our breathing capacity every single day. And it's funny because when you really push yourself to, like, that athletic level, whether you're just sitting or running or like what have you, you can find so many amazing like altered states of reality and where you're tapping into so many dimensions of here, wherever else, you know. We can get into that, but it's just amazing. I started understanding so much more later on in my life of like breath control and then the necessity of it, because I've gone through so many different things in my life where like I've had to find it. It like wasn't an option for me. I was like, I need to work on this, or I don't know what direction my life will go, kind of thing. I don't know if that made too much sense, but I've had to teach myself the understanding of what it means to breathe properly, to be sane. You know, because I think it's hard to survive in certain ways these days with all the different things that are going on, and I don't like being stressed out and I don't like being overwhelmed. So I understand that that's just a conscious decision with your breath control, obviously, and then also like you're saying, like the musculature and the bones and everything and how it's all integrated into that, because when you start pushing it all down, then you're reconfiguring everything as a part of yourself too. And I've seen that within my body through getting like stressed out and depressed and eating differently, and then just seeing your whole body morph around that, you know, is crazy. Because even just the past couple of years and everything that I've been through, like I saw my whole body change. And then like I tried to get back onto doing what I used to do like a couple of years ago, and it was so depressing for me because I couldn't do even 1/10 of what I used to do. And I was like, oh my God, like I've changed just a couple of years. Like I've changed so much, you know, and it was really depressing, but it was also a really big swift kick in the ass too, to say like, look, here's where you were, here's what you're not able to do. So like understanding like what you need to change. And obviously one of those things was like working on breath, because I know it's so part of our emotions and everything like that. So please continue. Sorry.
Our body, no worries. Our body like holds on to everything, and I think I experience anxiety attacks sometimes too, and it's an interesting experience because when you have those moments of like such intense like anxiousness, like your body forgets how to breathe.
Yeah, isn't that crazy?
Like, so that is just like a clear example of how and why our breath is so important to really use our full lung capacity, like you're saying. And it's such a good tool in those moments, although it can be really hard in those moments to remember. I'm like, I need to call someone, and like someone needs to help me.
Yeah.
Like, remember to breathe. I'm like, I can't even think to breathe.
I feel like my spirit's gonna fly away sometimes, like out of my body. Like I get into such like fight or flight moments where I'm like, I like sometimes like words are great for like descriptions, but like sometimes too, like I get to the extent where I'm like I literally feel like my soul is gonna like fly out into space right now if I don't do this, that, or the other, you know. And then I just have to like ground myself and bring myself down. But it's hard because like if you're stuck in a car and you're like in traffic, can't just get out of the car and like put yourself in the dirt and like take dirt in your hands. You're like, and like bring yourself, you know, I'm back, you know, but you can't do that. So like you have to be in your car with all these electronics and all this other shit going on, and try and find like your grounding place, you know, and it's not the easiest thing to do unless you develop the right inner talk with yourself, you know, to get back to wherever you are. Because I mean, it's So I deal with that all the time, so I understand the value of what it takes to find the right words and your own inner mantra for yourself to get yourself where you need to be, because it's not good to feel those things. The stressors on your body, you know, are not good, because then you, like when I got home yesterday, I felt like extra crispy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because I was just like, oh man, like not only did I have a long day, I stressed myself out, and then you know, but I've taught myself much better to say those things and work certain things out with my breath so that I don't feel extra worn out.
Yeah.
You know, and that's really important to anybody that's listening, to find that within themselves that has to deal with that anxiety, PTSD, or what have you, that you need to deal with, you know, but
totally.
Or come see someone like you.
Yeah.
To figure that kind of stuff out, because it's necessary.
Yeah, I was gonna say that too, because all these experiences we have, like what I was saying is, like, if we're not integrating it, it gets stored in the body.
Mm-hmm.
And I think so many people are talking about that now, but with chiropractors, we've been talking about the nervous system for quite some time, and we understand that, like, if the nervous system is getting too much energy stored in there, we're not releasing and like letting go of these, you know, patterns, habits, thought, you know, that could be thought or physical, like whatever are these patterns are that are holding us back from accessing that innate knowing within us and like accessing our true self. That's where we start to get stuck, and where we start to feel that anxiousness, and we start to feel some of these different things. And so getting adjusted, for me, getting adjusted is so important as part of my care for myself.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know, you know, when I first started getting adjusted, it was for like the physical aspects of you know, most people think of chiropractors as like neck and back pain and headaches, right?
So much more than that. Immune system, it's so much more.
Yeah. And so as I've learned, and I started, you know, that's where I started with chiropractic. And then I always kind of like had a hunch that there was more, because I don't know, it's just like, it's kind of confusing, I guess, until like you dive into the philosophy of it. And it's really about creating more space for your vitality and the life force energy within you to express.
I love that, creating more space with vitality. That's a beautiful sentence.
Yeah.
Can I share a quick story?
Of course.
Of something that I experienced that maybe like will share, you know, add to this this storyline of what we're talking about. But so I've injured myself so many different times in my life. I've always been into sports, and I've had different stories in my life where I've been injured. And so one thing that really was profoundly unique for me was I had two lower discs that were extremely compressed and one bulging on my like 1 and 2, like somewhere like on the lower part of my back through a snowboarding injury. And for years, it was like ruining me, and I didn't have the money or knowledge base to figure out how to like solve it for myself. And so I did certain things that definitely helped. But years went by, and you know, I got into like Bikram yoga, and I was doing all these different things to really help myself, but it didn't seem like it was solving anything.
Mm-hmm.
And so let's jump ahead a couple of years, because like I was doing all these different things, but I really wasn't figuring it out. I traveled to Thailand, and I went to this temple early in the morning that I felt this really like keen like connection to.
Cool.
For whatever reason. Like I stopped by it briefly, and then like I went to again, and it had been there for a long time, hundreds and hundreds of years, and like the people there didn't even know really how old it was, and I just felt like this really amazing like connection to it. and there was like this very large Buddha in there, and so I went kind of really early in the morning, and I sat with it, and there was a moment where it actually came to life. Like it was a living like entity. It was no longer like this statue sitting in front of me, and it looked at me, and it like smiled, and in this like moment, like everything was let go of like my body, and it said to me that you can like you're able to let go now. And it's like, but it didn't say it in like words. It was just like a overall feel. Like, if I could put words to it, those were the words, because it was like it, and it reminded me that the the pain and the hurt and everything that I was experiencing wasn't that it was stored in my body, but it wasn't necessarily from the injury. It was from a compilation of like so much in my life that I was just like storing in this place, and that in a weird way I was already healed, but I was holding on to the idea that I wasn't healing, and then onto the pain and to all these other things that I had associated with the pain in my life. So like it was like I was keeping it there in a weird way, and in this moment it was like you don't have to do this anymore. Like just let it all go. And in that moment I never had that pain anymore, and it was like gone in that moment. And it was, and I didn't realize it till maybe even like a day or two later, where I was like, wow, like I don't feel any more like lower back pain.
Yeah.
In my that area. But it was a really profound moment for me, and knowing and understanding and rewiring maybe some of my thoughts to understand that yes, we do injure ourselves. You know, we have scar tissues, but we also have internal scar tissues, mentally, physically, in all these different ways. And sometimes those like injuries within ourselves are connected to not only our body but the psychosomatic aspects of all of it too. And that we hold on to it because not that we like to, but that it's like sometimes wired for us to easier for us to hold on to all of that too. And I think that's why chiropractic has been such an influence in my life too, because it's healed me in so many other ways than just like going and getting adjusted. I've understood and understand the value of it being a continuous thing in my life, because it's an integration of thoughts, feelings, emotions, what we store. So it's just like a necessity. It's like breathing or drinking water.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's so important that people come to understand that, because it's like it's how we're hardwired as human beings to receive these kind of treatments. Because it's necessary, and until people like discover that and understand the value of it, they'll never get to that next level of feeling better, if you will, as being a human being.
Yeah, absolutely.
So thank you for listening to that.
Yeah, well, story. I wanted to say thank you for sharing your story, and it like I wasn't crying, but it brought up a lot of emotions for me, because like that experience that you had with that Buddha statue that came to life, which I love. He came to life for you, and like helped you like get to that place of understanding that that's what it's about, is like letting go. And like that's why I talk about releasing patterns. And it's like that letting go is, and like acknowledging it's there as well is like a huge part of it. Like acknowledging whatever the story is and being like, okay, like that's what it is, and like I can let it go. Like giving, it's almost like the Buddha gave you permission. Like, hey, like you don't need to hold on to that anymore. And I think so many people get stuck in that like for years. It sounds like you were doing it for years.
Oh, years and years and years. Yeah, it was like at least 5-6 years.
This pain, but it's healing is an inside out thing. And like that story that you shared is just so beautiful, because you got to understand like, oh, like the healing happens within, and I don't have to hold on to it, and I can allow my life, like I can choose to allow my life force energy, vitality, in chiropractic we call it innate intelligence, to express. And then like our pain's gone.
Yeah. I think it's setting a little bit of an intention.
Yes.
Too, because like I definitely went on that trip to be like, I need to get away, I need to heal, I need to do these things for myself. You know what I mean? So it was more than just like you know, and then when I'm a very sensitive person, so when I picked up on something like unique or whatever it was, like I was like, I'm gonna go do this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I'm gonna go explore this and figure out why like I am picking up on something.
Yeah, following your intuition.
Yeah, intuition, gut feeling, whatever you want to call it, you know, and then just going there and then not being like, I'm gonna like meditate. Like I just went there and I just sat and I just like I was in the moment and I was in the allowance.
Yes.
You know, and then
curiosity.
Yeah, curiosity, and I think through all those things and being in that moment, just being, I was allowing the openness to come.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's where a lot of healing comes from. You know, because a lot of times we have like expectations or we have these different things that we're trying to hold on to too much.
Yeah.
You know, and like I think with the holding on, there's so much tension.
Yeah.
And that, you know, and then when you're letting go of whatever it is that you're holding on to allows that healing to flow in.
Yeah.
You know, just like the expansion of your back.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're allowing the fluids to get in there and the healing process to take place, and I felt that, you know, a lot too. I try and hang a lot.
Cool, yeah.
You know, like hanging,
Bars?
just hanging.
Yes.
You know, that's like
so
I try and hang like every day.
Amazing.
Because I think it's like it builds strength, but then also like I love moments of hanging where you're hanging, but then you forget you're hanging, so your body like relaxes and then you can feel like parts of your body like letting go, like your shoulders and your back and everything too. And for me, the past like year, to anybody out there that's gonna listen to this, has made a huge difference for me and my back issues and in doing that, because it's so simple and it's just like 5-10 minutes a day. If you can't find 5-10 minutes to hang, I mean, you know, like you got to revisit everything you're doing every day, because it's only 5 minutes. It makes a huge difference for me.
Totally.
You know, so and you can tell people like what all that does too, because I don't know the technicalities of what hanging does, but I know it's a lot. You know.
Yeah. I mean, I know there's a book on it. I haven't read the book, so I'm not the expert in hanging.
Yeah, no, but
although I do have a chiropractic friend from school. He was like a couple years, I think, ahead of me, or maybe one. I don't know. Anyway, he like had this whole. He like read the book and like did this whole thing about hanging, and he hangs every day too.
Yeah.
I need to do it more.
Yeah.
But it's really good for our shoulders, right? Mm-hmm. And I think the like understanding behind it has to do with like when we look at primal movements and like, you know, just, and I'm really into like primal movements, like in terms of working out and how our posture is and things like that. But primal movements like this hanging is really strengthening our shoulder girdle, and we have so many people who have shoulder girdle issues.
Oh yeah, right? My mom stores all her stuff in her shoulders.
Yeah.
And it's so funny. My wife stores a lot of stuff in her neck, you know, and it's just everybody's got their spot, you know what I mean? Like totally. I'm a lot of neck, jaw, you know, lower back kind of person, and everybody has their like place, you know, it seems. But yeah, my mom's like, all that you touch your shoulders and you're like, geez, like what is in there, you know?
And it's also like, I was talking to a friend recently who was doing some traveling throughout India, and there's a practice, I can't remember the name of the practice, but it's basically where you hold I think Pacha something, where you hold meditation and stillness for like an hour or something like that.
That's not easy.
Like you have to stay still. And what he was sharing with me is like there's so much pain that shows up in that.
Oh God, yes,
and so it's not about the like, oh my God, like that's painful, like I want to do something to it. It's actually, or like for it or whatever. It's actually about like, oh, like it's there. Like I'm suffering because like I'm experiencing pain, but that's the key, is I'm experiencing it. Like it's not me.
Yeah.
And how can I just like allow it to be there and acknowledge it? And he was saying that like when he would do that, like it would shift. And so that's like part of my work too, is just like helping people realize like you don't have to like do something to like heal. It's really unlayering and unlearning all these patterns and stored and releasing these stored energies that is maybe expressing in neck pain or headaches or fatigue or digestive issues, right? Like all these different things. That's your body's way of communicating. And so instead of like trying to dive into like, how can I like fix this or do this? It's like, well, what if that's like the beauty of it? Like, how can we reframe how we look at pain and experience it?
That's wonderful.
Does that make sense?
Oh yeah.
It's a little different thinking, but like,
I love reframing. Putting on the rose-colored glasses. Different words that are used to restructure how you look at things. And I've gone to a couple like Buddhist meditation classes where you just sit and you sit up straight. And after 15-20 minutes of just like pretty much silence and sitting, you're sweating, you start feeling all the aches and pains in your body. And for me, it was always like lower back. So I'd start feeling like the bubbling up of like tension. And then you're like, oh my God, I can't even sit. Like I can't sit for 15 minutes, like sitting up straight and just sitting. And you're like, man, and then the suffering starts coming in. And then it's incredible to realize like, in those moments of like silence and like meditation and just trying to keep your posture, how all those things just start flooding in, and you're like, oh my gosh. And then you're sitting there, like you said, trying to restructure, reframe what it is that you're dealing with, and then understanding why and where this pain is coming from too. And then it for me, at least, it teaches me like my weaknesses, or like, oh, these are parts of my body I need to work on, because if I'm just trying to sit and I'm in pain, like I need to work on my lower back. If it can't even keep me up to where I need to be for this amount of time, maybe I should take a look at that. That's a weak spot of my body. I maybe need to do some work on. And especially if you're only there for a couple minutes and you find yourself dealing with that, it's like, really should take a look at it. But we don't really do that very much.
It takes because we live in such a fast-paced society, so it takes that repatterning of like, oh, how can I slow down and like tune into my body and like feel what you're describing is like, oh, maybe there's something that needs a little support here, right? I think that's gonna take more repatterning, because we just live in such a like go, like gotta be doing something, like and I just want to add on, like, there's a lot of times where people are like, okay, I just want to, like, rest. But then what do they do when they rest? What do you think they do?
Lay in bed or sit and watch TV.
Which
is not
resting. I was, like, hoping to say TV. And I'm like, TV, it's like, we can be intentional about TV and be like, okay, like, I am going to have this hour of TV. And, like, that's just how I'm going to do my rest today. But if you're doing that every day and it's become a pattern, then it's like, are you really resting?
Not.
And like, you're also still like you're taking in information, and who knows what kinds of shows or whatever you're watching. It's like, well, what's that information? And are you spending the time integrating that? Or are you just going next episode? Right? And so that's like another aspect of really slowing down. Like, can you just sit and just like be like, okay, like I'm going to look at the wall right there. And I'm going to notice the corner in the wall. And now I'm going to go like, oh, look at that. And now I'm going to look at this other picture on the wall or whatever. And then I'm going to go, oh, like, how am I feeling in my body? Like, this is something I do. Well, I try to do this every morning when I wake up. I'm just like, okay, what am I feeling in my body? How do I want to move? And just kind of like move and release some fascial tension. Right?
Well, thank you for saying that, because I was going to ask you, like, how do we, like, in working with you, how do we, like, or how do you recommend to somebody that, like, you restructure certain things? Do you ask them like what they do on a daily basis so that you can start to work with them, or how do you approach that kind of stuff?
So I do, like, in my intake forms, I have kind of like daily thing, like, what's your food intake like? How's your digestion? What's your like sleep patterns like how are you getting enough rest? how are you moving your body and how frequently? So I am looking at like a whole picture to see what's going on. And like what's your occupation as well, because like there are a lot of people who sit, there's a lot of people who move or do other heavy lifting, like there's so many different things or ways people are doing their work. And so I am looking at all of that, and then I kind of decipher like, okay, do we need to have more of like a posture conversation with ergonomics? Or do we need to have more of like, well, what's your routine in the morning? Something I really like to talk about with every patient that comes in is morning and night. Like, and day is good too, but morning and night, because our morning is setting us up for the day, and our night is setting us up for rest, which is also setting us up for the morning, right? Like some people talk about how like your morning actually starts the night before.
Yeah.
So I really like to talk about that because that really affects sleep. I think there's a lot of people who are not really feeling rested with sleep, and sleep is so important. They may not be getting so many hours, and the reason I'm talking about morning and night specifically is because of the light. Like, what's the light we're being exposed to? And these are a lot of what I talk to my patients about is getting back to the foundations of nature. Because we are nature.
Yeah.
Like, we are abundant. Like, when you look at nature, nature is so abundant. Like, and it's on time. It's on time.
Yeah.
Like
that.
Whatever timing it is, like, we don't have to be in a rush all the time, you know? Nature's not in a rush, and everything is accomplished. It's so on time. And so when we can, so I feel like getting back to nature is like a huge principle in how I talk to my patients. So the morning is important because not only like everyone knows like don't look at your phone in the morning. Oh yeah. Everyone knows that, I'm sure.
That's such a habit. Which is like for me.
Yeah.
It sucks.
Which is like, you know, to each their own, like everyone has to figure out their patterns with their phone. It's like in their habits with their phone. Like it's okay, like we're human. We're human. We're not meant to be perfect. And that's the perfect part about us, like, right? So, but it's really more like, are we getting sunlight or are we getting LED light first thing? That's what it's about. Like more than just like the distractions and jumping in, which, you know, that's like, it is important to like really take a moment for yourself in the morning, like tune in and tap into like what's going on here and how can that prepare me for my day. That's important too, but it's also like the light, the LED, the blue light is like so impactful in not a super positive way on how our brain is functioning, right? So when we can get more morning sunlight, direct sunlight, and then at night, are we like, when it's dark out, are we having all these overhead lights on?
Yeah.
Or are we having the LED TV lights on? Okay, if you decide to watch TV, are you wearing blue light blocking glasses? Or are you changing the tone on the screen to have a red undertone? That's what I do on my phone. Luckily, my friend like set it up for me. I don't even know how to set it up. But you can change your phone so that you can have a red undertone for different, you know, the setting. You can like switch it on.
I did not know that.
Of the day.
I did not know that. Crazy.
So, cool. So those are like some of the things that I like to talk about because it's connected to energy. Our circadian rhythm is connected to our energy levels. It's connected to, and our energy levels are also connected to like weight, right? A lot of people want to lose weight or maybe want to gain weight and things like that. Our hormone health, like our circadian health is so connected to our hormone health, which is also connected to our weight as well. And with the hormone health too, it's really important because we want a little bit of cortisol in the morning, right? Like, I don't know if you're familiar with like breast milk. Breast milk has a little bit of cortisol in it in the morning, but at night it has more melatonin in it. And so like at night too, if we're like in what brings our cortisol levels up as the sun's coming up, it's like the blue light starts to come. So initially when the sun comes up, it's red, and then it shifts to blue, and then it goes back to red, right? And so that's kind of like the way the rays are. And so when we're in the middle of the day, like it's totally fine to be around some blue light. Although I would argue that for people who get constant headaches and they're looking at screens all day, I would totally shift how blue the screen is and shift it to a red undertone.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
Don't want to interject because I definitely
Yeah,
run
sorry.
a flow. Oh no, don't apologize.
I'm talking all about this.
I always wonder, like, you know, is everybody different? Like, you know, like when you look at, obviously when they fill out all the paperwork and everything, are you judging each thing uniquely by the person, or are you kind of like locked into this like understanding that like you should go to bed on this time, you should wake up at this time, you know, or are you like very like each person uniquely to their own way, and like, because like I've noticed, you know, in my life, obviously we're always shifting.
Yes.
Right. So you can't say like you need to do this. You need, like, we're always like we're in a flow state of like changing so much every month and who we are, right? So like how do you go about it and those types of recommendations for somebody?
Totally. So I think naturally over time with care, those things start to shift naturally. Because what we're doing is we're changing the neurology, which is what's housing these patterns and habits. So that's like one thing. It's just like continuous care. You start to just see differences and make different decisions in your life naturally. So I sometimes don't really even talk to people about these kinds of things unless they ask me. Same with food recommendations. Unless I'm like feel like it's like, okay, I need to talk to you about this, like determine it based on like what they're presenting with.
So you're using your intuition?
I am using my intuition. Okay, cool. I'm like, when I'm in my office, I'm like whatever energy, I'll use source for today. I like God also, but I'm really connecting up to source and I'm connecting to the earth below because we have this tarot, I think it's what it's called, this like field, right? Our energy field. And so if we're open above and below, then we can channel a little bit and really tap into like what is necessary in this moment. And that's the same with when I'm actually like adjusting hands-on as well. I
like that.
But in terms of care, I think there are key principles to live by, which again, like for me, it's like, how can we get more in line with nature? And when we do that, that's where everyone gets to make, I truly believe in autonomy. So you get to choose like how you, like if you work a night shift and that's like what you need to do, like, okay, do it. I'm not gonna like be like, don't work a night shift because that's horrible for your health. Like, although, you know, I do think it's not.
It's not the greatest thing. Oh, I've done it too. Oh my God. I used to work like a late night shift, and I was like come home and felt like a zombie. And then it changed my whole lifestyle patterns too. So so it's hard to make those recommendations. You're like, I would say that you could look at that and see if you really want to do that. If you don't want to just tell somebody like stop doing that, you know, and making that money or whatever. So I totally get that.
But I'm not like rigid though. Like it's not like, oh, you need to go to bed like at 10 p.m. every night and wake up at 6 or 7 a.m. every morning. Like it's not rigid. I think my intention and goal around some of my recommendations for people is to figure out what's best for them. And following their, like getting so in tune with their intuition and listening to their body's needs, right? Like that's the goal. Because once you have, right, like you said, that flow, right? And in that flow, we also need discipline, which is where that action comes in. Because we can be in the flow and then we can be in the flow in stuck ways. And then that, I mean, I guess that's not really the flow, but we can get into rhythms and then we could get stuck. But having that discipline to take action will bring us back into that flow state, right? And does that make sense?
Oh,
like,
of course.
I know that's not a clear answer, like,
I think
I'm not really rigid. Like,
I think it's a beautiful answer.
The body's not rigid. Like, that's where dis-ease starts to happen.
Dis-ease, yes.
Yeah, dis-ease starts to happen when our body...
Which can lead to disease.
Which can lead to disease.
Yes. Yeah.
That's where it starts to happen, is once we start getting rigid in our body and we feel these tension patterns and our shoulders start to scrunch and our posture is like all wonky or whatever. Or we feel those pains that we were talking about. that's the rigidity building. But what our body and what nature wants is this fluid motion, our ability to adapt.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the goal. Like, if you need to stay up till midnight one night, like,
do it.
Can you be adaptable to it?
And sometimes
like,
I think it's necessary.
Yes, sometimes it's necessary.
Like, I had a friend recently, and it's so funny. He has been having a lot of issues with sleep.
Okay.
You know, but one of his issues was he was trying to combat it every night. He'd like get into bed and he's like, oh, I'm going to sleep. You know what I mean? Kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I set him aside and I was like, dude, like, why are you fighting this all the time? Like, maybe it's like preordained destiny thing that you stay up till as long as you need to work out whatever it is that you're trying to, like, your body is, or maybe another part of yourself is trying to tell yourself, like, look, you need to step and figure it out and just be awake and work on something, or even do some more work or what have you.
Yeah.
And it's so funny because just like the next couple days, he's like, I stayed up super late. I worked on shit. Like, I was able to like refocus on my stuff. And those next couple nights, I slept like a freaking baby.
Oh my gosh, amazing!
You know what I mean?
That's
and I was
amazing.
Just like, I was like, don't fight it. Like, you're like, you're holding up, you're squeezing the butterfly, you know, until you're killing it, you know. And I was just like, just go with it and just allow yourself to do whatever you need to do, because maybe his unconscious was telling him like, hey, you need to put some more work into this and figure this out. But another part of himself was like, no, I need to get more sleep so I can work more.
Absolutely.
You know, and it's just like sometimes we just gotta go with those things.
Yeah.
You know, and I guess I asked this question too because I'm always trying to promote in any way that I can that we need to figure out ourselves. We're all so unique. Mm-hmm. Though there's a lot of different guidelines on being human. I completely get that. We have to sleep.
Yes.
It's kind of important.
That's very important.
You know,
yeah.
but at the same time, like I feel in this day and age, like there's so many programs and teachings and all these different things. They're like, you need to do this and A B C D E and 9:30 10, and it's just like for certain people that I'm sure it may help a lot of people. And don't get me wrong when I'm saying this, like if you find a program and it's working for you and you see a difference, stick to it. Yes. Great. But on the contrast of that, I see so many people trying to define themselves and get lost in the rigidity of sticking to a program, and then they stray so far away from who they are that they get lost in also who they are, and then they get depressed. Because then they're like, they become this other person. You know what I mean? They become somebody like defined on what they were following, which is great, and it got them to a certain point. But I feel like the master level is also defining yourself uniquely for what you need to find internally, externally. And that's why I asked you those questions, because I feel like one of the viruses of today's age, and for kids and even adults, is there's so many different programs that tell you like, you're going to become great if you do this. And then you do that. And then people are like, it worked for a little while, but now I'm way more depressed than where I started off with, because it's like you lost yourself in the midst of all of that. Yes. And that's why I like to ask those kind of questions, because, you know, like I think it's beautiful how you answered it, especially with the nature aspect. I think that's a wonderful component that I don't hear very often, is that, you know, integrating that into who we are, because we are part of nature, but also realizing that everybody's unique and so unique. And if they found their thing, great, that works for them. And you can use some of their teachings, but if you lock yourself in so much to what somebody's telling you, and even for acupuncture, for anything, all these different things, if somebody tells you like, you need to do this, it may work for you for a little while, but it also can steer you in the wrong direction over time, you know? So that's why I asked that.
Yeah, and I totally understand that. And I had a friend I was talking to a little bit about this, that for some people, when they're starting a new journey, that regimen of a schedule or guidelines can be really useful. Like, just like, actually, my mentor talks about this too with BGI, Biogeometric Integration, BGI for short. Is like, there is like a structure to how you learn it. Like it's there's a map of triangles on the body is like where it starts, and then you go into deeper understandings of it. But it's like there is a rigid structure, and what my mentor says, especially to me often, because sometimes I'm more like I just want to flow with the body and like flow with the patterns, is he's like, well, don't become a slave to the, or maybe slave's not his word. How does he say it?
Yeah, but yeah,
like,
I see what you're saying.
Don't become a slave to the structure or whatever. Like, don't get so locked in and like so in your head about it, that you like lose the flow and your innate ability to work with the body, right? And then like another friend that I was talking to, it's like in the beginning of a healing journey or like a health journey, whatever journey, any journey, some structure is important. But
of course, I agree with that.
I agree.
Like
with that knowing statement. The time of when to like, oh, well, is this still working for me? And I think just asking those questions is huge. And then in my work, I think it happens naturally, right? Like as we're really changing the brain, how the brain is thinking, functioning, working, how the body's functioning, people start to like, okay, chiropractic is a spiritual practice. Like it's the merging between the physical and the spiritual. And so the more we can connect to that spiritualness that's within us, the more we feel aligned, mind, body, and soul, then we get to flow and find our flow with what works for us and what's our way. There's also systems that, and this is not really in my work, but this is more my personal like interests. I have learned like systems like astrology and human design. And also there's so many people who use astrology as like such a rigid thing, like, oh, I'm this sign, so I'm this way. And it's like, that's not how it was built. Like that's not the intention behind it. It's just like these principles or these like qualities that like maybe if you tap into some of those, it's like a suggestion. Like,
suggestion, yes.
Can you tap into some of these qualities? Like, does that resonate for you? And it gets really complex with astrology because we have so many different signs and different houses and all that, which I don't know the houses super well, but I know my sun, moon, and rising, right? Like I kind of can do well with understanding that when I talk to people. And then human design is another like really awesome tool to learn more about ourselves and like how we operate, and that's a really good tool. Like a friend of mine was saying, like that's a really good tool in how she helped understand herself in business as well. But yeah, just like really, we have those systems, and I also want to offer that all the answers of like who we are and what we're here to do, like what our purpose is within us. And
I agree with that statement.
We're on the path to like finding that. And that's why we have all the certain struggles that we each individually uniquely have. That's why we have all of the different pains that we have, the experiences that we have, like everything is connected and bringing us back to remembering like who we are at our essence and what our path is and what our purpose is. And I truly believe that. And I truly think chiropractic can really help shift that for people. Like getting in tune with that. From within. Without like me telling you, like, you need to do this.
Yeah.
And I trust that so much. I trust that the body knows. The body is so intelligent. Our souls are so intelligent. And if we can start to trust our body more and listen to it, like that guy, your friend, who like stayed up late and was like, I got all this work done, and then he was resting well in the next few days. It's like if we trust what our body's communicating to us and just really being open enough to listen, like you had with the Buddhist experience, like you were like, I'm open, you said that, then we can really tune into like what's next.
I think trusting too, like a lot of people I don't think really knows like they don't really know what that means.
Yeah.
I think like giving of yourself and like the sacrificial like understanding that like when you trust, it's like a reciprocation to like the divine energy or whatever placement word you want to like put on it.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people have also like lost that there's like a divinity inside of that word, you know, and that a lot of people don't understand really. When you say it, I can feel it. You know, so it's like I know that you know it, but a lot of people will say a word and I don't feel it from them.
Yeah.
You know, because you've come to that deeper understanding and relationship.
Yeah.
With that word, because there's just so much more to it, and that's something that I think we've lost also in this language, like in the Hindu language. A word is a history of explanation. It has storylines and interconnection, interwebbing of like all these different things that one word came about. It has so much to it.
Yeah.
I think the English language has that too, because we're like, it's a compilation of so much around the world that we've developed this unique hodgepodge of stuff. But I think that it's important that we also realize that even the words that we use, like trust, also derive from so much more than just that, the tone, what it means, and also like the importance of it in doing not only the work that you do, but also giving yourself to someone like you and going in there and trusting you to perform different things on them. You know, it's necessary. And I think a lot of what I see these days too, like people will go in there and they like have an expectation of like, you're gonna crack me, and then I'm gonna feel great. You know what I mean? You know, and it's like they don't like, but there's not that trust there with you. You know, like I think it's important, people that are listening, like, you know, you've spent a lot of time not only through schooling but teaching yourself and becoming part of that trust, so that people can come to you openly and receive what they need, more than just a crack here or there, and like, you know, but it's an experience. It's an openingness of like one's capacity to be accepting of the healing process, and I think the trust is all kind of like part of that.
Absolutely. And working with bodies is so, and I think this is something that makes me unique. And you know, a lot of chiropractors are into this as well. I'm not the only one, but really tuning into the subtleties of like what the body, how the body, what's the tone of the body and how it's expressing. Because we have a lot of, like, our body tells a story, right?
Yep.
Like our body, it shows a story. It gives a story.
Expresses a story.
It expresses a story through pain.
And all kinds of things.
Yeah. But then there's like subtleties that are underneath the surface of like, you know, experiences people have had. And so when you're working with bodies, this is something that's like really important to me, is I'm not doing anything to someone during the adjustment. I'm doing a dance with them. Like we're dancing together to work through these patterns. And like just the tone, that change in tone of like, I'm doing something to you. Or like I hate when people call like what we do like manipulation. It's like, no, I'm not manipulating anything. It's like
a lot
words
of negative
are
context to that.
Yeah, like words are so important. And so it's like we, you know, are dancing, we're flowing, like let's find the rhythm together. And that's like the goal, because in creating safety builds trust. I think that's like one of the important things, and listening to people's boundaries as well. Some people come in and they're like, I don't want you to do my neck.
Yeah.
People have a fear around that.
Yep.
Or like, I don't want this or whatever. And you have to respect that, because that's creating that trust and safety for what they're comfortable with in their body. And I have heard stories of some chiropractors or from patients that like, I didn't want my neck done and they did it anyway.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's a violation of someone's boundaries.
Code, their
which is connected to chakras as well.
Oh yeah, because
it's like
it's like you're saying no.
Yeah.
And then you're going above that boundary, and you're like,
Yeah.
you know, like the no is the line you don't cross.
Exactly.
You know, kind of thing. But yeah, I 3.5 years ago, I was an injury where I had 10 herniated discs and
oh my god,
and 2 extreme bulging discs in my back.
What happened? If you want to share.
No.
Okay, no worries.
It's funny. If you watch my podcast, I actually have a whole video of how that happened to me.
Okay.
But I didn't even know I was injured until like I went to a chiropractor, and he's like, "You're really messed up," and I was like, "Oh, okay. Tell me what's going on."
Oh.
He's like, "I'm not gonna touch you." He's like, "You need to first I'm gonna do some X-rays and see what's going on." And then it was once he actually got the X-rays back, he's like, "You're really messed up." And I was like, "Oh, okay," because I had nerve damage. I couldn't feel a couple of my fingers.
Okay.
I couldn't feel the left side of my neck. I couldn't feel this part of my shoulder.
Okay.
So it was a lot of there was a lot of damage going on.
Symptoms,
yeah, and so I still deal with it to this day. I'm still dealing with stuff and working stuff out. But it was so great because he was very intuitive, and he started me off so slow and gentle, and it was a healing process.
Yeah.
And every time I would go in, it wouldn't be like, "Oh, crack, do this," you know what I mean? And I've gone to other chiropractors where they go and they don't even say a word to you. Mm-hmm. They just lie you down and do your thing. They're like, "Have a nice day," and you're like, "Oh," you're like, "That was great," but it was there's no sensitivity at all,
and no
personable experience.
Yeah.
Every time I go in, he'd sit down. "How you doing today?" I'm like, "I'm fucked up." And he's like, "Okay, what is worse today?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm having last time you did this, I started having pain here," kind of thing. He's like, "Oh, let's take a look at that today." You know what I mean? He's like, "Let's just focus on that. I'm not gonna do your back. Let's focus on your shoulder or whatever."
Yeah.
And it was so good. I was like, "Wow." And then I'm even getting a little emotional right now. He would focus on that, and then that day, it would go to something else. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And it was funny because it felt like that energy was traveling throughout trying to run away from the experience almost. It would go to a different part, and then I'd go back, and it'd be "Oh, let's work on this today." You know what I mean? And then he would focus on that. You know what I mean? So it was it was almost traveling. It was trying to this escapism of whatever it was that I was going through my body. But it was such a wonderful experience and so unique and so different because, like I said, I've gone to so many chiropractors who are boom, bang, bam. You're out of here. Yeah. And very maybe 1 or 2 times in my entire life has anybody sat down and be in anything. I'm not even talking about chiropractic, just healing in general from a doctor or what have you. Mm. What are you dealing with today? Today is so unique. Yes. Right? Yesterday was yesterday. We worked on that. That was great. But how are you feeling today? And I was like, "Oh, this." I'm let's work on that. Yeah. And I think that's such an amazing thing because it's we are so different.
We are.
Every day. You helped me a little bit with that, but today I'm dealing with these struggles and it hurts here. You know what I mean? And it's so important that we talk to our clients and patients. And every single time, we go in there, we treat them as a unique individual that day.
Yes.
Right? It's so important because every day we're always dealing with something so different. And with pain, it's always emulating from something different or traveling or shifting. Yeah. And I think it's really important that we always look at somebody different every single time. And I think that it's great how you respond to that because it's talking to every person every single time and filling out the vortex of whatever they're needing that day.
Totally.
So I think it's great that they're approaching it like that.
That's also that's the essence of my flow too. When someone comes in and just for a regular adjustment and getting on the table, I check in what's going on, what do you want to work on. For me, sometimes when I go in, what do you want to work on? I'm I want to work on this pattern, and it's not even related to my body. It's more I don't know, pattern of money or finances or pattern of my insecurity or whatever. You could even set an intention for something along those lines as well. But what I want to say is that when people come on the table, and I think so many chiropractors kind of run through and have their flow that's like pretty like rigid almost sometimes.
super rigid.
And it's like
almost uncomfortable.
Yeah. And it's like, no, like you're saying, we show up differently every day. And because we show up differently every day, our adjustments should be different every day.
Yeah.
And that's like another principle in BGI as well, is like these patterns that I'm talking about that in the geometry. Sue Brown is the creator of BGI, and she basically said that if the pattern is coming back, like our intention is to clear the pattern. If the pattern is coming back, then we either didn't fully clear it, and we need to make sure we clear it so that it doesn't come back, or, you know, that could be a pattern in their life that, like, they brought it back into it.
Oh, yeah.
But that's the thing, is, like, we don't want to see the same thing. We want change. Because if we're seeing the same thing happening after an adjustment, or, you know, things keep coming back, then it's like we're not creating enough change to actually move through it, and then our adjustments might end up looking similar.
Yeah.
We want them to be different.
So if that does tend to happen, do you also recommend them to other healing modalities? Like, because you can't encompass everything.
Yeah.
Right? Do you ever say, like, look, I can see this pattern perpetuating. I think you should go see this person alongside of what I'm doing?
Yeah. I haven't, like, had to do that quite yet. Well, let me think. Maybe I have. But yeah, I think cross-referring is really important. Especially, like, for me, especially with nutrition, I definitely will be like, I mean, I have foundational principles that I work with nutrition. I'll offer those, but if there's something more serious going on in the gut, I don't have that expertise. So I'm definitely going to refer out. Like, why is that still showing up?
Yeah.
I don't know. Because to me, what I'm working with is neurology. If your nervous system is communicating better, your digestion should improve.
Yep.
But if it's not, then I don't know. I'm missing something. So I don't know everything.
Yeah,
you know?
People can get so stuck in patterns.
So I'll refer out. Or like, I'll refer to acupuncture as well if I need to. Because like maybe something in the meridians needs a little more energy flow.
Yep.
Because I don't know the meridians. And acupuncture has a very similar philosophy, I think, similar to chiropractic as well, although I don't know it very well. But it's really just like allowing energy to flow, right? And really removing those blockages. And that, I think, is at the essence of acupuncture too. So I think I have many patients too that do see acupuncturists as well. And they feel a difference having both side by side.
Yeah, of course.
And so if we're not seeing results, then yeah. But I do want to say, though, I do have like a couple clients where it's like the same thing. They come in every time and it's like, I'm still in pain, I'm still this, I'm still that. And then that's where it's tricky, like in the moment, because I want to like be there to support them and just honor like what they're experiencing. And energetically, I'm like, you gotta look within.
Yeah.
Like, you have to look within. I'm doing my best to allow your vital life energy to flow so that you can find the answer. Because I'm not the healer, right? Your body is the healer.
Yes. The dance.
Like
you're
your
saying.
body is the healer. Exactly. I'm helping facilitate that. I'm here to support. I'm here to facilitate that healing, that power that you, like, re-emerge that power within you by shedding these patterns that are in the way from you expressing more life. But at the end of the day, it's all of us. It's my responsibility to work through my things and find the answers. And that goes for everyone.
Yeah, it's hard to give somebody
responsibility.
So hard. I know. You're like,
exactly.
Come on already, figure it out. Yeah,
there are
not
times,
that easy.
Yeah, there are times where I just want to be like,
yes.
Like, I just want to shake them and be like, come on, like, you have to look within. Like, you're like seeking so much around you. Like, it's not outside of you.
Well, I think, I mean, I've been a hypnotherapist, a life coach, and
cool.
some other things.
Amazing.
So like I know how it is when like you want to shake somebody out of, but I think that also, you know, people play a game within themselves too. Like they enjoy the seeking of the things,
the validation of I'm in pain.
Yeah. Well, there's that too, but I think that there's so many different aspects of the psychology of what goes into why people seek out things, and then like we're talking about like the trust factor and the allowance and all these other things that need to line up with also what you're doing. Because if those aren't there, they're never going to get the 100% factor of what you're doing, because they're also going to be stopping certain energy flows or what have you. You can have as many needles put in you, but if you're not having like the allowance and the trust and the openness to allow those things to come in to receive properly and genuinely, then it's not going to happen for you. And that's the craziest part of not like the mind body soul relationship, because it's like you need to have those aspects. And that's why I was asking, like, do you ever refer people out? Because it's so necessary for some people that are a little bit more complex in those ways. They need to have those different dynamics structured for them so that they can find the allowance, the trust on psychological, physical, mental aspects of their life, so they integrate them, and then they all work, and then they find what it is that they're looking for. You know, but so many people play this like this spiritual game, if you will, where they're just like, it's nice to do this and it's great to do this, but I almost like experiencing these things so that I can keep on going to do it, kind of thing. It's like no, like you're trying to find a solution. Like for me, like I'm in pain, I'm trying to find the solution to these things. I'm like, I don't want this this to happen to me anymore, you know? Yeah, of course.
What if there is no solution?
I think that there is always a balancing act. So like in a solution, there's always the yin and yang to like life, and so that in a shifting and finding solutions, it's always going to turn to something else too. But then you find a solution for that, and so it's like a never-ending thing. Like I like there's some higher understandings that I've come to in my life, and realizations that nothing will ever stop, and like nothing ever ends, and it's just like a perpetuation of all these things that we think that are like pain and love and abundance. Like we think that it's like it's just the ebb and flow of the universe, and even like when we die or we move on, like I don't ever think anything ends. Like I think it's just a continuation. So in that answer, I think that solution, there is a solution, but it will then shift to something else, whether that energy shifts to love or it shifts to something else. That love energy can then shift to negativity, or it can shift into pain. It's always like a fluctuation within the body and how things move and channel. And then, you know, we can get really deep, because then I think it's also like a continuation of like so many lifetimes of stuff that you're working through also, and finding different patterns and solutions and all these things that you're working through. And anytime that you feel like you figured it out, like something else will come about, because there's no ever like finding the absolution in anything. Like I don't feel like it doesn't exist. Just like perfection is like, you know, a state of like a moment in time when you might feel it, but then right after that it shifts to something else. You know what I mean?
My life is great.
Yes.
Right, tomorrow, not so much.
And that's a beautiful thing about life. You know, it's like time is linear, and when you think you're in that moment and you found it all, it's like it's only what you think of it.
Well,
you know,
time is linear. And it's not. It's
We
vertical.
can go into that.
I'm like, that's where I'd love to like bring back in like talking about the present moment and why like that's such a foundation. Why my name or my practice name is Just Be, is like with all of those shifts and with all of like these lifetimes of experiences that we have and wisdom that we have in our body, or like in our innate intelligence, like in our knowing, is like, how can we be present with it at all times? And like, if you think about time, like the only way we can really like connect into that is like vertical time, right? Like, I don't know, have you had that experience of like really experiencing vertical time where it's like time didn't exist anymore because you were so present?
Yeah, I experience that a lot.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Yeah, so it's like time doesn't exist anymore and you're so present, and then you're just like in this pure abundance of joy, even with the pain.
Yeah.
Like, even with the pain, like I had this experience after one of my adjustments. It was in August of last year. One of my favorite adjustments I've ever had. And I had that moment where it was just like this pure, like, now, like it was vertical time, like time had stopped. And then I like just had this understanding of like, oh, like that's why I experienced that. Or like, oh my God, like I can be joyful about why I experienced that. And that was a heartbreak that I was experiencing or like working through. And it was just like so helpful for me to just like have gratitude for the pain.
Oh yeah.
Like some of the deepest pain ever, you know? Like, and so if we can live in that way, and I think this is basically the concept of The Power of Now, the book, is if we can live in that way, then like we, you know, like that's the way. And that's how we find our path, and that's how we follow that path. And something else I'd love to offer that I've been working on, like in my personal life, is sometimes when things show up, I don't always try to understand it anymore. Like, do you always try to, like, oh, I have to, like, understand, like, why that happened or whatever?
I try to.
Yeah.
Like the way I think, I'll try and, like, I'll think that I'll work it out.
Yeah.
But then I come to the acceptance of, like, it's not worth it. I give it back.
Yes.
You know, I like, it's above me to try and my feeble understanding of certain, I give stuff back all the time.
Okay,
like,
cool.
I'll try and like process it, and then I'm like, well, it's not for me, and I'm like,
exactly.
It's too much.
And so how can we discern like which experiences are worth the energy of like, okay, I need to like unravel this and figure this out?
That's a good question.
Like, I'm never gonna know the answer to why that happened, and I'm never gonna know the answer to like why that was important, or you know, like what I need to think about it. Like, do I even need to think anything about it, or can I just allow that experience and allow the unknown and mystery, and then just like reconnect with God and just be like, okay, like I don't have to know this, like, you know. Or maybe there's maybe not, no energy source knows. Like maybe it just is there.
Yeah.
And like, how can I move through a challenging experience without having to like have so much of a thought pattern around it? You know?
It's a profound question. I think it's uniquely to each individual and how they want to live.
Totally.
You know, so it's like, do you like thinking of it? I think that, you know, there's different ways you approach meditation. There's the absence of everything, and then there's like the focus on a something. So it's like you can go about it however you want to. Like it's just the intention you set to however you want to live your life. Like for me, like I'm always trying to like work it out and like understand things. Like, why did somebody think like that? And then why did they do this? And then I'll try and like work it all the way down to something. And I usually tend to find that it's way more than I can even comprehend. And I'm just like, boop, I give it back. But I have fun with it. I think there's fun. I think there's fun in trying to work those things out. At the same time, like to switch back to another part of that whole questioning is that a lot of people run away from pain. I think that if you've ever been heartbroken, in that moment, it feels like the worst thing ever. Like you'd rather
Oh my
choose
gosh.
death, you
Yes.
know. But then
Oh
like when you
yeah.
get out of it, like even a couple months later, and you start to understand the value of your you're like wow, like I'm so glad that I experienced that because I was truly feeling the reality of life and being human and knowing the depth of
Yes.
what pain and beauty and love and everything feels like. And you're like, now I can release it
Yes.
back to the universe. And thank you so much, universe, for showing me, what that feels like because that's what being human and love and pain and like
Yes.
would I rather be doing that or not feeling anything at all? And I would hope for most people that are still in their body right now would say that yes, of course I would want to feel that. It's amazing. Like why wouldn't I want to feel the depth of pain and beauty and love to then know what heartbreak feels like because
Yeah.
then you start to understand as you get older, do I want to feel that again? And then to coming to higher realizations, you realize, yeah, I want to feel it over and over and over again. And that's why we continue this perpetuation of like coming back to this planet and reliving lives and doing this cyclical
Yes.
process over and over again. Because when you get to like a spirit realm, you realize like, oh, yeah, it was hard and sometimes were horrible, but like there was also so much beauty and realization and wonder in those moments of feeling the worst heartbreak you could absolutely feel because a lot of that heartbreak on the opposite spectrum of that was pure love and all of that
Yeah.
it's like on the same page if you
Yes.
will, and it's like deciding that, and it's like of course you want to do it over and over and over again because it was great, right?
Yeah.
So I know where you're coming from. I always look back and I'm like, man, I'm so glad that I felt that low, but it was only because I was human that I thought it was low, and it was
Mhm.
just amazing, beautiful energy, and
Yeah.
it was like I only looked at it that way because of how I felt, and it was just an energy. You know
Yes.
what I mean? And
Yeah.
we always try and put our script on certain things when in reality it's just the universe's way of energy flowing to us and it's how we
Yes.
transcripted it. So
I love how you put that too. Like I just love thanks for sharing. Just like
yeah.
that little snippet because something like it brought up for me is like it's so true like how we are able to just like be with the pain, whatever type of pain it is like is our humanness.
Mhm.
Like that's literally like what you said, like that's what makes us human and that's the beauty of like, yeah, why we're here over and over again.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
To learn over and over again. And this is something I think about lately too, or like in this experience of like that time period, is like two things. One of the biggest lessons was like two things can exist at once. Like I am so heartbroken and I love that man.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah.
two things
It's
can
amazing.
like
Yeah.
and it's like I can appreciate like wow, I loved him and that was like a beautiful relationship and it really served at the time and like now I'm destroyed and like this is also my collapse or like part of it. There was more happening besides just the heartbreak, but this is part of the collapse that I'm experiencing in order to like level up and to become who I'm becoming.
Mm-hmm.
Because like those moments in life where it's collapsed, like there's like a full, for me it was a full, like everything kind of came down all at once and it was like this experience that took me to the depths of like who am I?
Mm.
Like who am I?
Yeah.
And who do I want to be?
Mm-hmm.
And where do I want to go? And how can I listen to myself more, my intuition more? How can I trust myself more?
Mm-hmm.
And you, I mean, you can get to those places without pain, but when you have a collapse and there's so much pain, that is like the way. You get to these places where we can experience the opposite.
And we like
and it can exist at the same time. Like
yeah.
I'm happy now and I can still be sad.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's like
so many different emotions
yeah.
can come from that. But I think it circles all the way back around too, like from what we talked about. the depth, the depth of which you can get yourself to being uncomfortable, there's so much growth.
And how can you
in that?
How can you like go into it too? Like, I think that's something in our society is like people are so scared to like face themselves. And like that's where some people do, like these couple clients that I was talking about, it's like they do everything. Like they're going to all the practitioners, they're going to the breath work, they're moving their body, like all the things. And it's like, well, how can you, like my offering in those moments is like, how can you do less? Like maybe you're doing too much. Like maybe you really need to like look in the mirror or like, you know, whatever, however you want to do it. For me, I look in the mirror and like talk to myself.
I do self-talk too.
As part of my shadow work.
Yes.
Or a journal.
Work, yep.
Or it's like, what if we just, another thing I did recently, it's like, what if I just write down worst case scenario? And I just like literally wrote down like worst case scenario is all these things. And I'm facing it. Like it's in front of me and I'm like, let's work with this.
It doesn't seem so scary.
It's not scary.
When you write it down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not scary, and it's like okay to have those fears.
I was just about to say that.
And also know that like it's not the reality. Like what you desire is the reality.
I think it's important.
Like,
really quick too, not to cut you off, but I think it's important that you also like to face those fears. This day and age, like I see that like so many people, young and old, more so a younger generation, are so scared to what it means to love somebody. You know what I mean? Like with the dating and everything else that's going on, like everybody, like we live in such a more so a superficial world, not like it's ever changed, but more so definitely in this day and age. Nobody wants to jump into that cold plunge. Because they don't want, they know it's freezing cold, you know, and they're like, oh God, if I jump into that, it's going to be terrible. So I don't want to do it. I want to stay nice and warm and cozy. And of course, everybody wants to do that, but like you learn so much from the depths of love and losing someone and all of that. It's so important to face those fears, even the writing the stuff down and understanding that like some of the challenges that you'll see on that paper, you might want to challenge. Like you might want to face some of that stuff. You don't want to just run away from, cross it off, or like do a nice little loop to the nice thing or whatever. Because honestly, like some of the greatest success that I've ever seen in my life comes from like the repetition of pain. You know, it's like pain after pain after pain. And then after a while you're like, man, this is not so painful as I thought it was when I first started off. It's just nobody wants to get that uncomfortable.
Totally.
You know?
And it's uncomfortable.
Yeah, all the time.
It's so effing uncomfortable.
Yeah. But you have to, and it's
especially like if it's a period of time. Like it's like for some people it's months, some people it's years, like, and it's like it's uncomfortable. And I hope for people who are experiencing that, like months or years of that, they're also like tapping into joy during, like amidst, you know, these big shifts and transitions and changes in life. And really, like something that helped me through that period is like, what do I enjoy doing? Like how, like what feels good? Yeah. Like what feels good for my mind, for my body, for me, like moving my body is good. Like listening to music and dancing or doing a big workout and lifting weights and like getting my blood pumping. Those are the things that like, or talking to a friend, like obviously community is huge as well. Community is very important. Like it's huge. Yeah. We cannot get through some of those trying times and periods of our life without our support system.
Like we're all tribal beings, and it's important to develop those groups. And you know, that's why I think like even this podcast is so important to create those like tribal connections through people, like story. We're telling, all we're doing is telling stories. Just a bunch of stories. That's all we're really doing. And I think it's important that, you know, people hear this podcast and listen to these stories because they'll interrelate to not only what we're saying, but just like it's a level of communication without people actually, they're communicating. Yeah. They're listening, but like it's all reciprocation. Yeah. You know, so in reality they're taking part in our stories and understanding that we're human, we've dealt with all the same stuff. There's
Yes.
no difference in pain. Like there's no difference in love. We're all experiencing the same thing because it's all coming from the same source.
And we are it.
And we are it. Exactly. We are a part of that. And I think that's the beauty that people need to understand, is that there's no difference in your storyline or mine. We're all receiving the same thing. It's just all a transcript of how we interpret it, how we jot it down, all these different pains and loves and everything. But the communication that we reciprocate on is we're all human, and that we're all going to experience something uniquely the same.
Yes.
And I think that's the most beautiful part, and understanding that there's people out there that love and genuinely care about you, and that's why you've started this practice, is because you care about people. And that's why I started this podcast, is to show more people that there's people out there that genuinely care and are trying to make a difference in just the little reciprocation every day, that they can give a little bit of money to you for you to give love to them, you know, and it's all just an exchange. And I think that's important, that people learn to find that, whether it's going out and seeking it through you, or just every day finding what it is for themselves, like dancing, listening to music, talking to somebody. It's important. But as you grow and that money comes in, you'll tend to find like using that money as an exchange to the growth of yourself, like we were talking about, is important, because then you'll grow, and then everything that you're wanting will come to you more naturally. You know, because it's a larger exchange, if you will. It's money to the universe. You know, so that it comes back to you and what you need.
And it's in service too. Like when people come to my office, it's like, they may be giving me money, and they're also giving themselves like commitment to themselves. Like, and I want to emphasize that like you're investing in your growth and evolution, and how you show up in your day-to-day life. Like, that is what it is. And it's me who's offering that. And it's also like I'm working like in service of like the greater energy of the universe, right? Like I'm helping them connect to that source. And like as I'm helping them connect to that source, I trust that that's going to have a ripple effect onto everyone around them, and that's going to make an impact in the world, and really like elevate the consciousness of how we're operating. Because there are so many people who are operating from pain states or fear states. And like, if we want to talk about fear a little bit too, that's like kind of the root of a lot of like, you know, things that we haven't experienced, or what holds us back. And that is part of that sympathetic nervous system. It's that fight or flight. Like at the essence of that, it's fear. And it could literally be not you know, back in the day, it was like a bear is coming for us, or a tiger, whatever. And now it's like, I watched this video on Instagram and that triggered me. Like, there are different responses that we have in today's, because we have so much information at our fingertips with technology. And also, like, it's okay to like see those things, but it's that integration that's important, and not allowing it to set us into that fight or flight state all the time, or that fear state all the time. And that's where like my own practice, you know, in the past many years, like few years, has been like, how can I guess since I've started understanding this through like neurology in chiropractic school, is like, how can I create more safety in my body? And so that's like something I serve too. It's like, I want people to feel more safe in their body, and like be present with their body to feel that safety. So, because if we can feel that safety within our body and build tools around that, then we can be more adaptable when we get into those like fight or flight fear states. And also, like, back to the neurology, healing only happens when we feel safe. Digestion only happens also when we feel safe. Like that's where like a lot of people have digestive issues, or like whatever, irritable bowel syndrome, just like bloating all the time. It's like, well, are we chewing well enough? Are we you know, in a quiet environment or whatever environment that feels good for you, right? When we're eating, and like, what's the state we're in? Or are we watching TV that's like crime shows or whatever? Yes. I don't know. It's like, what's the state we're in when we're eating, and is that the root? Is that the root of most people's like digestive symptoms?
Yep.
And so anyway, yeah, that's like a little bit more neurology, like really getting into that, and how changing their neurology, the goal is to really help people feel safety in their body, feel present in their body and with their mind as well, and in their soul, and like connect to that source energy, so that they can live in more alignment in all areas of life, and connect to their intuition. Yeah.
That was great. I took a couple deep breaths there because I'm like reflecting on just like certain things that I need to work on myself, and then things I see around me, and obviously for my daughter, like we always try and make those moments of like eating where it's like you just focus on your food. You know, like we're not trying to be like so scatterbrained, because it's like it's everywhere. The second we step outside the house, it's everywhere. But I think that people are going to start coming back here soon. So I think we should wrap it up. If there's anything else that you want to talk about, or I think at this point it's good that I'm going to put all your information on this page so that people can reach out to you and have everything. But if you want to do like a shout out to just like where people can find you, if you want to put like email or anything like that, please.
So I feel like Instagram is probably a really good way to find me. I really try to use that mostly for business, but
it's
obviously it's that's not always the easiest thing to do, because it's built
some people
to like make us scroll. But anyway, my personal like me Instagram is Dr. Chrissy with 2 Y's and double M, ChrissYymm. And then my chiropractic page, which that's more my page where I really am doing more educational like information, or like showing a little bit of adjusting, things like that, and talking more philosophy, things like that. In terms of anything related about chiropractic is at Just Be Chiro.
Okay. And you're located where? In San Diego?
I'm in Pacific Beach right now.
Okay.
But you caught me at an interesting time. I'm moving to Mission Valley.
Oh, okay.
Area. So I'm going to be a little more central to San Diego.
Yep.
And I'm going to have a little bit bigger of a space. So
great.
It's going to be great.
I like Mission Valley. It's definitely been an upcoming, new part of San Diego for a while now. They've put a lot more money into it, and the housing and everything, and trying to clean it up around there.
Totally.
But that's great. I think it's a great spot for you. And probably more affordable.
Well, a little bit.
A little bit? Okay. Because I know that PB was just I've talked to business owners there, and they're like, it's getting outrageous. To even rent a small room over there. I'm finding ways to keep it affordable. Of course. Figuring that stuff out.
And then if anyone does want to email me, my email is hello@justbechiro.com. And that's my website as well, as justbechiro.com.
Great.
I think those are all the ways
That's all the ways
to reach out to me.
One thing, I'll put all that information out there, and I'd just like to say we've done great, and I think there's so much that we can explore in other conversations. We can go into like such length about other stuff, and especially like what we're just touching on at the very end. But I think we said a lot.
There was a lot of potency today.
There was so many things said, and I want to thank you again for being here.
I
really, really appreciate you and what you're doing. And thanks again for driving up here and everything. And we'll do it again. This was great. I'll put it out there for everybody, and I hope that a lot of people see this and come check you out. So thank you.
I just want to thank you for having me, asking me to come be a guest. This was so fun. Just like hearing some of your stories is also amazing, and I love that you were kind of talking about that as like in community, and we just tell stories, and that's part of the learning process for all of us too, is hearing other people's experiences and seeing how we can connect to that as well. So I just want to thank you for your podcast and for you and all the work you're doing.
Thank you.
And inviting me up here.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.